Hello, everybody. My name is Chil Kong, and I am here with our 2021 Trailblazer Award winner, Justin Chon. Justin, thank you for joining us today. Dude, it has been a long time. Uh, so, how are you doing? You're in Hawaii, right?
Yeah, I live in Hawaii. So that's why I'm here.
Well, I'd known you a long time, but it was interesting as we went through your history, like, because you grew up in Orange County, right? In
Yeah.
Orange County, California. There's actually a lot of trailblazers that came out of Orange County. How does that impact you as you became a storyteller?
Specifically, being Korean American, I think it impacts me because, I was born in Garden Grove.
Yeah.
And in Orange County, like that area before Fullerton became very, Korean heavy, it was Garden Grove Boulevard.
Right.
I was born in Garden Grove Hospital, and, I did Taekwondo there, and I have a lot of friends from Garden Grove. And, and Orange County in general, South Orange County and Orange County in general is very Korean heavy. So I think that maybe there's a correlation there with, a lot of Korean Americans coming out of Orange County that have desired to do something
Yeah, it's
impactful.
just because you actually had at least a small circle of friends, right, who are Korean and Korean American, right?
Tons. Yeah. I mean, I in elementary school it was a lot more white, and then going into junior high, there's a huge influx of Asians from Asia, like whether it's Korea, Taiwan, and so. But then I went to a Korean church in Irvine, one of those big, like huge, like mega churches. So growing up, like I saw Korean people since I was a kid. It was funny. My friend Richard Song, who's a pastor now, but he went to a different elementary school called Culverdale, and I went to Bonita Canyon, and we went to same church together. But I remember our schools made pen pals with the students, and he was my pen pal, and I met him one day going to church. We were in Awana, like the
Right. So wait, so you two like wrote letters to each other when you were
we
kids?
wrote letters to each other, but the thing was, like, we met in Awana at church. But the funny thing was when we met, or recently, about 2 weeks ago, I had dinner with him when I was in LA, and we're just talking. We're like, hey, did you ever realize? I told this to him. I said, did you ever realize they probably made each other pen pals because we were the only fucking Asian kids in the school. Like they're so racist. They're so racist. They had, he was like the one Asian from that school, and I was the one Asian. They made us the pen pals. I was just like,
because that was the elementary
like, oh my God,
school.
I never thought about that. But I was like, yeah,
Hey, you know what? Forced segregation sometimes works in our favor, and this is where
it
we're.
did. And yeah,
Yeah, because the interesting link is from there. Your parents had a shop in Crenshaw, which actually got looted for the LA riots, right?
yeah, not Crenshaw. It was Paramount on the board of Compton, and
Okay, yeah.
basically it was Compton, right? But like, so my dad's story is he was an actor in Korea, and then he quit, married my mom, moved to the U.S., and then did anything and everything to try to make it. So like he's like the sort of the American dream, in the sense that like he started with nothing and did swap meet on the East Coast. It's called a flea market, and he did that for 10-15 years. He worked 7 days a week and just slowly built up from there. But he was doing swap meet at least for 10 years. I mean, when we were living in San Diego, one time he got pulled over he's been robbed a bunch of times, but like one time he got pulled over by CHP because he had an Econoline van and they thought he was transporting illegals. So on the freeway, they stopped him in the middle of the freeway, made him get down on the freeway floor, open the back, and realized he was just selling, shoes.
Well, see, that's the thing with Gook, because I love that movie when it came out, and what I loved is that you had integrated, like, it felt like multi-generational storylines within these two young characters, right? Because your brother felt more like the kind of the new immigrant trying to hustle his way through, but your character, the younger brother, felt a lot more like the dad, so, someone who is the first generation, just really, really working hard. So was that something? Because you were young when that happened.
11, yeah.
Yeah. So what part of that do you remember that was so visceral that it stayed with you? That
Oh,
you
I remember all of it. I mean, I remember, I mean, Chill, you do remember things since you're like 4 years old.
yeah.
It's like just because I was 10 doesn't mean I didn't remember anything,
Yeah.
or 11. I remember 11, like it happening. I remember it all going down and watching on, my dad commuted to Compton every day from Irvine. So like he had like a really long drive. He wanted me and my sister to grow up in a good neighborhood, but like, I remember watching it on the news and being like, shit, that's where my dad's at. And
That must
also,
have been really weird to be
yeah.
so far away and to see that.
Uh, it didn't feel far away because I was there all the time. I
Oh,
was I was at the store all the time, and so it didn't feel far away. But one thing I do remember is during that time, going to my dad's work and opening the drawers and seeing guns. That was very normal. Like there was guns in drawers and it was just a different time. Just to speak upon what you're talking about with the first generation and the older brother. I knew a lot of guys like that helped out their parents, that worked at their dry cleaners, liquor stores, whatever it was, that had that kind of true mix of being like the firstborn, Korean child. Their parents are still obviously very, very Korean, and then they're kind of a mixture. They still feel very Korean in like its own way. I know a lot of those kind of guys.
well, this is why it's really interesting to see how you storytell, because I feel like a lot of ways you understand the weight of the complexity of that mix. Because not a lot of people, you're either kind of very Korean or very Korean American, but there's
Yeah,
that middle ground that is really tough
yeah,
to maneuver, right?
yeah.
Which is what I thought. Like I think jumping to your movie now, Blue Bayou, we had before this started, like we talked about how Blue Bayou was very much like this incredible mix of and full picture of what Han and Jung is, right? So for people out here who doesn't really know Jung or Han, do you want to like do a quick description of what you thought it was and how it applies to you for your movie?
Yeah, Han is, our spirit and our, like, very much like our just like internal fire and heart, that make us Korean. And then Chung is very much like love for one another and brotherhood and sisterhood. And it's funny enough, yeah, it's something that I make sure is in every freaking film that I make, is that elements of those things. That's, I think, one of the ways I help subconsciously, Americans understand who we are as Korean American without having to speak it. It's like, that's a cheesy way. But one thing I did say in earlier interviews was when I was talking to Alicia
Mhm.
Vikander, you know, I wrote a letter to her, and that's what I told her. I said, listen, you have Han and Chong, like abundance of it, and you're Swedish. But that's why I feel like we're connected, is that you have an emotional understanding, whether you know it or not, of where I come from and who I am, because I've seen it in your work, your earlier work, your Swedish work. And that's what got me the phone call and the meeting with her. But she has it, so like, it's something that's very Korean, but like, you feel it a lot in the African American community, and it's
What
yeah.
what I love is there's a couple times, and as you all get to enjoy this movie, and I'm telling you, go see this movie, is that there's a couple times when she looked at you with that incredible look of both passionate love and just frustrated anger, right? Like you fully understand why there's a divided Korea when you look at Alicia's face. In a couple of these moments. And so how did you get her to that place? I mean, I know you said that she had it already, but that's a tough place to be, to ride that
Oh,
emotion.
I don't. That's why people ask me, like, how did you know she could play a Southern blue collar like woman? And I knew because of that. I really knew because of that. If I explain that to Caucasian people, they don't understand what the hell I'm talking about. But if you're asking what I had to do to get her there, I didn't have to do shit.
Yeah.
She just came as is. We talked about accent stuff. We talked about some practical stuff to get on the same page so we're cohesive and in the same film together.
Yeah.
But in terms of her nature, that's how I knew is she has an abundance of these qualities that I just knew was going to be electric on screen and people would feel that. And I don't think it was utilized. It's been utilized in a more Western sense in our other films.
What I love is how you got the kids, both in Gook and this, to
Yeah.
also resonate that. Because that is, I'm telling you, Justin, that is not easy to do.
But even in Miss Purple, I got the flashback with those
Oh,
kids.
yes.
That little girl in Miss Purple.
Yeah.
She had dude, when she pushes the soju glass to her dad when the dad is having a really hard time.
Yeah.
She had it in spades. I mean, it's crazy. I think when we're shooting that, the way she was pouring the glass and everything, I didn't tell her how to do any of that. She just did it. I think but to address that, yeah, it's just it's intuition and more of a feeling rather than an exact science of oh, I need this, that, and that when I'm casting a child. It's really seeing enough kids to know what's going to work and what's not, in an energy sense.
I got to tell you too, because your gut instincts are so good. How do you hone that? Because that takes, that it's not like all of a sudden you have this vision and gift. For you, how did you develop that?
It's just emotional intuition, and it's just trying to be empathetic. I mean, contrary to maybe what you believe, Chil, as me as a human being, I have a little bit of empathy.
No, see, that's the thing. I knew you had empathy in spades, because like both, all the friends, everyone that when we hung out together, is that we could see you had kindness in spades, right? Because of the way you approach people and the way you approach things. So as much as, because for all of you out there, we have a very long history, Justin and I, but we got to see each other. We got to see each other at our best and our worst, right?
Yeah.
But
definitely the worst too. Yeah.
but one of the things I want to go back to, which is how your evolution of storytelling happened, is that one of the projects we actually got a chance to work on together was Crossing Over. And I remember before we walked into, I think it must have been a second day of filming, and I happened to join you. I was in your trailer, and you had this giant board that was listed kind of your beats, your takes, what you think you're feeling, all your prep stuff. You had it broken down, and I was just stunned the amount of complexity you had within this. Was that how you kind of look at these as a director as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, here's the thing, man, is you ask, how do I have that intuition? It's a developed skill, now I've been doing this 2 decades, right? Even me, Chil, I've actually been around a second now, but I mean, what I think the misconception of what we do is that it's just pure talent and just sort of a born sort of innate thing, and it's not. It's all built, and it's built over time, and it's a lot of hard work. And what you're seeing, I think that a lot of people think that I got lucky, especially with Gook. And what people don't see is all the shorts that I made before Gook, the film that I made before Gook that I lost $100,000 on, and
Man
it's
up.
just work. And so when you saw but when you saw that board, I've been putting in that much effort and work from the very beginning. But I'm not gonna go around advertising. Oh, hey guys, I don't get extra credit for that. If the movie's not good, it's not good, right? Or or if my performance sucks, it sucks. It doesn't matter how much I go, oh, look at this board I made, or so the only thing I could say is as effortless as it seems, it's only that looks that effortless because of all the decades of work that I put in, all the hard sort of, thought and yeah, the best analogy is I heard Sean Penn once talk about ballet, right? He says he doesn't like ballet, but he appreciates ballet because he understands the amount of pain, the amount of hours, the amount of technique, practicing fundamentals over and over and over and over to make it that seamless, to make it that effortless, and I think there is something to that, just putting in so much down work that you make it look easy.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is why I because I know all the work that you've put in, because I remember when you were first starting doing your YouTube stuff. I was like, wow, this is at least you're putting stuff out there, but it was rough. And what I felt you were doing, at least with every piece, I could see you grow. I could see you looking at different pieces. And this is why I love the fact that you are our trailblazer this year and that we're honoring you, because a lot of this times, like you were saying, that trailblazers, sometimes it feels like these are people who lucked out and get in the right places, but it's not. Like you have, I remember the first time I met you was at a film where my Korean was so terrible. I remember you looked at me like, what are you doing? I remember that. We were doing a table read. And I swear you looked up like, oh my God, I have to work with this guy.
That's not the first time we met, but
well, that's the first time we worked on the project together.
Yeah. No,
but,
that's not true. That's not
it
true.
Isn't?
Joe, remember Year of the Dog?
Oh,
that's how we met.
Oh my God, that was true.
My brother, that we did this really shitty, like, no, not shitty. I can't say that because we never saw it. And
Right.
We did this like very, very like low budget independent feature that was all green screen. It never came out, but that's how we met.
No, that's what I was talking about, because I think I was speaking Korean in the beginning, and the director didn't speak Korean. You were the only one that actually was fluent, and I was like, "Yeah, you looked at me like you're talking with marbles in your mouth. I can't understand a word." So, and you did it in the nicest, like dongseng kind of way.
Yeah. You know what I will say is like, with the whole YouTube, all that stuff is like, I have no shame. It's all practice, man. So when I look at like Jordan Peele, that's what he was doing. He wasn't doing YouTube, but he was doing Key and Peele for all those years. And if you look at those sketches, a lot of them have this dark undertone and like this dark humor. He was honing his craft and his skills, and he was figuring out. And then they made Keanu, that film before, and he was just figuring out like how he was going to make his next moves. And then he makes Get Out, and then people go, "Oh yeah, but no. That was years and years and years of him figuring things out. And that's what I treated YouTube as, was just a playground of trying to figure out, just having a sense of play, but figuring out, okay, what matters to me? How do I want to tell my stories? All by doing it in this very sort of comedic, stupid way, just so I could see. But it was never, YouTube was never really my end goal. So it was just a way for me to get work out there and get instant feedback.
Yeah.
And then I was seeing, the other thing I saw was, that's why, I really appreciate my friendship with Kev Jumba and Ryan Higa and Dietrich, all these kids that were in Wong Fu, all these kids that were like, being pioneers in that space and democratizing who got to like what kind of content people were seeing. There was no gatekeeper, and that's why I thought it was so revolutionary. I was like, people are sleeping on this. People don't understand the amount of power these kids are accruing and have by just putting their own stuff out there and letting the people vote. Yeah. But that was something I thought was incredibly powerful, and I just wanted to experience it myself by doing it.
It was essentially like incubating system, right? Because you all got to incubate your storytelling process. And what I love is, out of all this work, all this just material that you kept putting out there, is that we have actually some auteurs that came out. Like, you were one of our auteurs that came out of that process. And so I'm so proud of you, Justin. I'm just honored to call you friend, and really glad that that we have someone like you within our community, because how often do we get to say that we have someone who is speaking about our stories? Like, we are really, to the theme of our gala this year, is that you're one of the people that are really reclaiming the narrative. You're redefining the way we are talking about ourselves and about how people are talking about us. Mm-hmm. So, I can't gush enough about how proud we are of you, and so thankful that you are here to accept the award. Yeah, so many props to you, my friend. I want to give you an opportunity too, like to actually pay it forward. And then, what is the challenge you want to give to the folks out there? Besides all the hard work that you have to do, what would you challenge the next group of people who want to reclaim the narrative and talk about the Korean experience?
Yeah, and for me, it's like this idea of like who came before, who came next, and all that stuff is sort of does not matter to me. It's anybody, people above me, people below me, people like that are my peers. And what I'd like to put out there, very specifically is like, I see that as Korean Americans, we can tend to be quite insular, right? It's very much like, oh yeah, I'm a Korean American, and it's like it's a huge sort of thing I see, especially in Asian Americans, is that we have this divide amongst each other, which is why in Blue Bayou, you saw me do a Korean American adoptee. Also, in the same film, you have Vietnamese, American refugees, right?
Right.
And what I was trying to do there is we really need to be there for each other outside of just us as Korean Americans, because we are in this together, right? Especially as Asian Americans in this country, we make up such a small, when we talk about numbers, right? We make up such a small population that if we operate in this segregated kind of way, we say in public, oh, we're all for each other, but in action, I don't think so. When we look at the actual like action that we take, we're quite still, this is our side, this is your side. And I think what I'd love to see our community do more, in addition to supporting us, which I think is important, is also to open up to the possibilities of helping out Pan-Asian American,
Right.
like, and for, so like, and I constantly do this, like, and I can only lead by example, in the sense that, like, before I made Gook, it was after I made Mana, but before I made Gook, I did this op-ed for NBC after walking out of a racist audition. But
Right.
in addition to complaining, I said, okay, well, what can I do about it? And I said, I'm going to make my own film, and you guys can hold me to that. And that film was Gook, and I said very specifically, I'm going to speak about the LA riots and blah blah blah. So I put that out there, right? Well, what I'm doing now, to push the conversation forward, and this whole agenda is I think that we need to tell each other stories amongst Asian Americans. So my
Right.
most recent film, Jamajaya, that I just wrapped and finished shooting, is about an Indonesian father and son, because I truly feel like Southeast Asian stories are underrepresented and are not being properly exposed in our narrative. So I'm using my platform, I'm using my resources, because I think it's important. And I think that that's something us as Korean Americans can do, because we are very, we've done really well in this country. And what we can do with the positions that we've attained is also to look out for all of us, not just this small sector of being. Because ultimately, here's what happens: is I have a child, Chil, you have a child. A lot of people that are going to watch this are going to have children or have children. Our children are going to grow up in a world where, after a few generations, it's not going to be just about being Korean American. They will
Right.
become very mixed. They will become and it will be about being Asian American and holding on to that heritage. So it's a collective community that I think we need to continue to foster.
Well, what I like is this too, is that we're defining our own who we are and using our identity to also then include other identities too.
And
And
lift up.
lift up. It's like a big, but that's, we saw, actually, I saw that in you a long time ago, because what you were doing even back in your YouTube days, that you were including other voices within what your storytelling. And so again, I'm really proud of what you represent for us. You truly are a trailblazer. You're continuing to be a trailblazer by including all these other voices. So thank you, Justin, for being out there and telling your stories, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Chil. I still have your apartment key.
Do you remember the discussion at the LA Film Festival where we were talking about the older generation and then the younger generation, and you were the younger generation? Remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you were looking at Aaron and I, you're like, yeah, that's the older generation. And then because we're like, oh, I think they're talking about that. We're the older. But now, like, you're starting, you're because you are on the front lines now in a different kind of way. Like, I'm just glad that you who can articulate and say things in ways a lot of people can't, that you're out there doing it.
I think that's what was great about being on the other side of it, being an actor and living mostly for myself, and then realizing it wasn't very fulfilling. And
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest sort of mindset change, was when I was like, oh, it's not because, I mean, I feel bad. Like I feel for like actors just constantly trying to be relevant and all that stuff because it's so fleeting. But, being on this side, it's like, no, I know what I'm doing. I know the intention and I know that it can help. So like I can sleep at night and I'm not chasing this elusive dragon,
Right.
that is pointless and is ultimately going to be unfruitful and not going to make me happy. So like being on this side, I think I can make much more of a difference. And then, I'll do it as long as I can. I think these next 10 years I'll try to fucking kill it. And then, like when I get to, mid 50s or something, maybe I'll go teach at UH. I think I have a good 10-year, 15-year run where I can really sprint. And then when I start to slow down, I think I'm gonna go teach at UH.
Dude, just tell your stories, man. Until that well runs dry, just keep telling stories. That's the most important thing. Just keep telling your stories. Because we need your unique voice. I would have never have told these stories the way you told them, and I'm just happy that you're out there telling it the way you want to tell it. And that's the key. Is that just finding people who has a unique voice is hard enough, but then who's capable of actually fulfilling that is pretty cool. I think we're very lucky to have you. So big props to you, and bye.
Thank you.